The sound.
The sound of...
The sound of Kent.
Of Kent. Together, we can make a difference. BBC.
It's BBC Radio Kent on a Friday lunchtime almost. Yes, here we are. I think since the horror of what's been going on in Ukraine started, the thing that amazes me, never fails to amaze me actually, is the generosity of spirit of people here in Kent and in this country as a whole. And although we all have our disagreements at times, when things like this happen, it's just lovely to see people pulling together and making a special effort, I suppose. And a couple from Whitstable have driven around 16,000 miles across Europe to help transport Ukrainian refugees. Last month, Francis Wildman and Jane Darling decided to drive a minibus to a refugee camp in Poland to offer transport across the continent to anyone that they could help. They since returned to Kent, and then they've gone back to Europe for a second trip in an even bigger minibus. And Francis, I'm delighted to say, joins me now from Poland. Francis, good morning. Where exactly are you?
In Krakow at the moment.
OK. First up, Francis, amazing. Kudos to you. Hats off to you. Well done for everything that you've been doing. What made you want to help in the first place?
That question was asked by a police officer at the Channel Tunnel when I first set off. He said, "Why are you doing it?" And I said, "Because I can, and I think I should."
Brilliant. That's the answer. That's the answer right there. No need to complicate it, for sure. Where have you been? Where's your trip taken to you so far?
Oh, goodness me. Well, we've been through an awful lot more countries than we've actually taken people to, because we've had to go through countries to get them there. Mm-hmm. But we've certainly we've taken people to Italy, Latvia, Portugal, Spain, France, Germany, Czech Republic, Portugal twice actually, Poland, a couple of cities in Poland. We were in Berlin recently. Each time we go back, it's wherever the most need is.
Amazing. So good. I mean, you've been everywhere by the by the sound of it. Are you sleeping on the bus, Francis?
So far on this trip, we have done once. On the first trip, I slept in my car twice, but we're trying to avoid it, and it's usually, or has been, when we haven't been able, because it got so late in the evening, to arrange a hotel, and the effort didn't seem worth it. Let's just bed down here, you know?
Might as well, mightn't you? That's for sure. Tell me about the people and the pets that you've helped.
The pets, well, I'd already been to Portugal once, and when me and Jane came back together, we met a guy who was arranging transport to Portugal. And he said he'd transported 500 people to Portugal, but he had 2 people and a very big dog that he couldn't get on any transport. And would we take the big dog? So we did. It's a Rhodesian Ridgeback.
Truth.
It's an enormous great thing. And that trip, we took people to the Czech Republic on the way to Portugal and to Barcelona on the way to Portugal. A recent trip that we did, we stopped in a hotel because it was going to take more than one night to get where we were going. And, of course, there were en-suites in the hotel rooms. We got 9 Ukrainians into 3 bedrooms in the hotel. And in the morning when I was checking out, one of the mothers took hold of my arm and said to me, "Thank you. That's the first time we've been clean for 2 months."
Bless. It's small things like that actually are the big things, isn't it?
It is. It's the people. It's the people and the children. Once you're out here, you have to keep going. And there are volunteers at the centre that we mainly pick people up from, who we've taken back to airports, and they've flown back to the UK, arranged some more time off work, and then we pick them up again and take them back.
I think you're doing an amazing job. It's obviously a very emotional thing that you're going through. And you're doing this off your own back as well, aren't you, Francis? You're not doing through a charity. How's that working out? Does that make it slightly more complicated?
Well, it sort of makes it more complicated, but then in other ways it makes it easier. We're sort of free agents. We respond to whatever we can respond to, but it's through contributions from friends, family, and now many others that we've been able to afford to do this. And we've got a GoFundMe page. If anybody Googles "Because We Can GoFundMe," you should find the first return there is a fundraiser by Jane Darling, my partner, and you can contribute there.
I suppose on a day-to-day basis planning ahead is tricky, but do you know where you're heading to next, Francis?
We're off to Warsaw Airport soon after this interview to pick up a volunteer, taking him back to the Polish border, and then we're hopeful, and I almost don't want to say this, but we're hopeful that we've got a trip lined up tomorrow for the first time, excuse me, for the first time to come back to the UK with some refugees who've managed to secure visas.
We wish you all the very best, Francis, and Jane as well. And as I said earlier in the interview, hats off to you and well done. Amazing what you're going through. And I know it's emotional for you as well. Francis, all the best to you. That's Francis, live in Poland this morning. Francis Wildman from Whitstable.
From the BBC Sounds app, on your smart speaker,
Play BBC Radio Kent.
and on your radio.
The sounds of Kent is
BBC Radio Kent.
At 1 o'clock good afternoon, I'm Adam Dowling with the latest. Here in Kent, the relief effort continues. A couple from Whitstable have driven around 16,000 miles across Europe to help transport Ukrainian refugees. Francis Wildman and Jane Darling began their journeys last month, taking people to a refugee camp in Poland, but offering transport across the continent to anyone they could help. They've now gone back to Europe for a second trip.
A police officer at the Channel Tunnel, when I first set off, he said, "Why are you doing it?" And I said, because I can, and I think I should. We've taken people to Italy, Latvia, Portugal, Spain, France, Germany, Czech Republic, Poland. Each time we go back, it's wherever the most need is.
Well, a couple from Whitstable have driven around 16,000 miles across Europe to help transport Ukrainian refugees. Francis Wildman and Jane Darling began their journeys last month, taking people to a refugee camp in Poland. They've now gone back to Europe for a second trip.
It's the people, the children. Once you're out here, you have to keep going. And there are volunteers at the centre that we mainly pick people up from who we've taken back to airports. And they've flown back to the UK, arranged some more time off work, and then we pick them up again and take them back.
The sound of Kent.
of Kent. Together, we can make a difference. BBC Radio Kent.